Okay, welcome to the MSU Turf Team Update. My name is Kevin Frank. Here on May 26th, day after Memorial Day. I'm actually out at the Hancock Turfgrass Research Center today trying to take care of some plot work in the early morning before it gets too hot, but I think I missed that window already. So we have today with us Dr. Jeff Andresen, who is going to be giving us the weather forecast and telling us all about this heat that has now settled in over Michigan. So go ahead, Jeff.
Thanks, Kevin, and I'll bring things up here. What a difference a week makes. A taste of summer plus. We got we'll have better part of a week of it, but the long and the short of it here, we look ahead. There will be more changes. It isn't atypical for this. We're still in a transitional time of the year between spring and summer, and we'll see more evidence of that here over the next few days. Looking at the past week, though, and I had to go back and actually look. It's been a while since we've had a warmer than normal week, but on the left here, these are mean temperature departures for the 19th through the 25th, and solid above normal for all of Michigan and certainly almost all of the Great Lakes region, anywhere between 4 and as much as 10 degrees above normal in portions of the Upper Peninsula. So way above. It's been some time since we've been that warm or that abnormal. Interestingly, on the right-hand side, these are our 7-day precipitation totals. And quite a difference, but generally it was a drier than normal week across much of the state. There were a couple of exceptions, some spots that picked up a little bit heavier showers here and there, but by and large, most areas saw less than half an inch for the entire week. And one note here as we look at where things are. As we all know, we've had way too much water really in the last, 2 weeks. We go back with a lot of heavy rain in the week before that. And that's reflected here in all of this blue and purple across much of lower Michigan. But 2 areas of exception I think that are important to note, especially given what we just saw with most areas lighter than normal precipitation here in the last week. One is the Upper Peninsula. Much of northern Michigan has been missed by rainfall over the last several weeks, and this is a percent of normal precipitation for the last 30 days. And you can see that much of Upper Michigan running less than half of normal, or what is normal for this time of the year. So things are becoming dry. And I think it's important to note, because we had much above normal precipitation long term, all the way back to last fall and through much of the winter, there's certainly moisture at depth. But I think the point here is that in some of these areas, the other one is the southeastern corner of the Lower Peninsula. You can see that down here with many areas on the order of 60 to 70% of normal. And I think the issue there is primarily topsoils. Especially with these warmer temperatures as of late, we've got potential evapotranspiration rates now up in the neighborhood of 0.2 of an inch per day. There's a lot of potential water usage there if the water's available. But again, I think the issue here is that we have a couple areas in the state that really the topsoil it could use certainly some water, and it's actually a little bit dry relative to again northern lower and western lower, where the topsoils have dried out this past week, but still ample to above normal moisture for this time of the year. So a different story depending on where you are. Back to the temperature departure here with the very warm week last week. We put a big dent in our growing degree day deficits. You can see the vast majority, nearly all of the states, still running behind normal, but not as far as what we were a week ago. I was noting here earlier to Kevin that we picked up almost 100 base 50 degree day units over the last week. In many central and southern parts of the state, about 80 units of base 50 units to the north of that, which is the largest so far this season. And it leaves most of the state right now from several days behind in the south to as much as maybe a week and a half or so in the north. So we're still behind, but not nearly as far as where we were last week, again, given the warm weather. Well, looking ahead here, more summer, at least in the short term. On our weather map this morning, there's a big area of high pressure here out over the eastern seaboard. That with clockwise flow around that, we've got ample moisture and heat, humidity coming up from southern and subtropical locations. That's been the case over the last couple of days, and it will remain so for the next 24 to 48 hours. But off here to the west, you can see the next weather system really to influence us. It's a stationary frontal boundary through portions of the Western Corn Belt. And the reality of this is we look here to tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, you don't see much of a change. So in terms of our weather here, we have essentially carbon copy, more of the same that we've had for the last couple days. And that is warm, sultry, humid, with high temperatures today and tomorrow into the 80s. We actually might see here on Tuesday, we might see a couple locations in the far southern part of the state approach or maybe meet 90 for the first time this season. This will probably, though, be the warmest day of the upcoming week. That is Tuesday. It'll be a few degrees cooler than that tomorrow because of some clouds. But in general, we are looking at a very, very summer-like tropical pattern with the expected development of some scattered showers and thunderstorms during primarily the afternoon and into the early evening hours, both days. Most locations, you might see a thunderstorm in the distance or hear a rumble of thunder, but in general, it's going to be a hit and miss type of thing. Many areas will remain dry and warm. Where it does rain, you could have a quarter to half an inch, but most spots will see much less than that, if anything. And again, today, that's the case today. It's also the case tomorrow, but I think we will see a little bit more in the way of coverage, rainfall coverage tomorrow, Wednesday. And then the next significant weather system to affect us out here, you can see a couple cold fronts. Those finally make their way towards Michigan and move through the state during the day on Thursday into early Friday. And you can see that on the map here for Thursday morning. Here's the first cold front, and then there's another reinforcing cold front up in southern Canada that will be down here for the weekend. So a pretty significant change in here is coming by late in the week and into the weekend. But before that happens, this front goes through, we will see the best chance for rain during the next week. It should be fairly widespread showers and thunderstorms most of the day on Thursday into early Friday. And it's a change from what we've seen recently. I think the heaviest amounts and the greatest aerial coverage will be across northern parts of the state. So that should help a little bit in terms of that dryness that we've seen develop recently in the Upper Peninsula. Looking generally at 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch precip totals as a fairly general range before all comes to an end during the morning hours on Friday. After that goes through, we'll see our winds shift from the south and southwest where they are now around to the northwest. And it's going to bring, again, Canadian origin air into the area and into the state and the region here for the weekend. And so expect about a 20-degree drop in temperatures. And so from the 80s and 60s, daytime, nighttime temperatures here over the next couple days, by Saturday, Sunday, we'll be looking at highs generally in the 60s, lows in the 40s. There is a chance that it's a Canadian origin air mass. It's relatively low humidity. We could see a couple even upper 30s. I wouldn't be surprised this weekend in low-lying areas in the far north, but a big change from where we've been recently. Also, no precipitation expected here after that air mass moves in on Friday. So look for pretty much fair, dry conditions during the daytime. And the next chance for any significant precip, probably not until the beginning to middle part of next work week. And this is another look at what we're seeing here in the upper air, our forecast for the weekend. But the upper air forecast pattern here, this is for Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. And the big ridge that we've had over most of this central and eastern part of the country has been shifted off to the east, and it's replaced by a trough. So you can see how when our upper air jet stream flows shifts around to the northwest, we get cool air out of the northern latitudes. That's what's going to happen, at least temporarily. And on the right-hand side, we have mean temperature departures from normal. This is for the 5-day period from Friday through next Tuesday, or Thursday through next Tuesday. And the blues here indicate cooler than normal temperatures. The reds and browns are all above normal. But beyond this, I think the news about this is the pattern, similar to the pattern we saw for much of early May with all of the cold air and some of it Arctic polar air moving in. The issue on this one, though, is that it looks like this trough is going to continue to move eastward and not sit there. That's what it did in early May. Right now, all signs are that this pushes off eastward into the North Atlantic here by late next week and is replaced by this big ridge out here. And again, underneath that ridge, you can almost guarantee warmer than normal temperatures, and that's what the medium range forecast guidance suggests. before I forget, our precip totals for the week are pretty healthy, near normal totals for the week. Most areas seeing between a half and 1 inch total. A little bit higher coverage in totals, again, for change in the northern part of the state versus the south. And most of this precipitation will be associated with that frontal passage coming up on Thursday. Here's the medium range that I talked about here. You can see a very subtle but distinct eastward shift of that jet stream pattern that I just showed. The ridge moves from the western U.S. to the middle, the center part of the country. The trough now is out over the Canadian Maritimes and moving off into the Atlantic. So we get this with the ridge here, really strong bet. We're going to see above normal mean temperatures, and that's what you see here in our 8 to 14 day outlook, which goes through the 2nd to the 8th of June across much of the lower 48 for that matter. Precip is a little bit harder to pin down. Michigan's in a little bit of a transition area between a wetter than normal area here over northern parts of the state and region up into southern Canada, and then a drier than normal pattern closer to the middle of that ridge down to our Ohio Valley. So we'll have to keep an eye on that one to see. That one could change at any given time. And the main storm track, though, with this kind of an upper air pattern, will likely be just to the north of Michigan through southern or along the U.S.-Canadian border, and that's a little bit of what you see here. The 6 to 10 day outlook is a bit of a transition from this, given the cooler than normal temperatures that we're likely to see here this weekend. But in general, the medium range is pretty consistent in suggesting we go back to this warmer than normal pattern here by the middle to latter part of next week. Finally, some new long lead outlooks they're consistent with what we've seen for much of the last couple months. And for the month of June, on the top here, mean temperatures forecast to be a little bit towards the above normal, warmer than normal. No direction, the equal chances or EC scenario here officially. However, not too far to our south and west, you can see an area of above normal precipitation forecast. And so I think you'd have to call this one probably normal to above normal in terms of precip. And that's indeed what the outlook for the June through August 3-month outlook, and actually beyond that into the early fall as well. It calls for warmer and wetter than normal conditions. And that's been consistent here for the last few months. And it is for this particular issuance as well. So we're no big changes. There's not much. We're still neutral in the Pacific right now. There's no tropical forcing factors. These forecasts are all pretty much based on both the numerical model guidance that goes out that long and also on some long-term trends. So not a real strong confidence type of outlook, but it generally is consistent. You like to see that in terms of these outlooks over time, that they are consistent. That definitely has been the case. So warmer and wetter is also the long-term direction. So summarizing here, our week of summer, early week of summer here continues at least through Wednesday, with big changes coming on Thursday. That's the next real chance for widespread precip, although we will have scattered thunderstorms here both Tuesday and Wednesday afternoons. More widespread rain than on Thursday, and then fair and cool for the end of the week on Friday and for all of the weekend into early next week, with a big drop in temperatures back into the 60s and 40s. And then, as you just saw in the medium and long lead, by middle part of next week, we should see a warming trend once again back up to above normal. So a little bit of a roller coaster ride, but that's not atypical or unusual for this time of the year. But it certainly is a break from this week. I think everybody certainly caught me a little bit off guard as to how warm and humid it actually got at this time. Very, very, very unusual, or quite unusual for this time of the year. More like July or August than certainly than late May. So with that, I'll stop and finish up here, Kevin, if any questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, as you were saying, this heat that just came out of what seemed like nowhere, certainly, if nothing else, is getting a lot of us to check out to see if our air conditioners are operational for this early in the summer. And I remember, when you were talking back early on in March and April and telling us it was going to be a warmer, or potentially warmer and wetter than normal summer, it was kind of like, boy, that was hard to believe for a lot of weeks until it finally showed up just now.
It's hard to imagine when it's 25 degrees with a 10-mile-per-hour breeze in May, but it did. And I guess it's another reminder for these transitional times of the year. Sometimes we really do see big swings, and same thing happens in the fall sometimes. But this one, it was a little surprising as to how warm it actually got, especially with the landscape as wet as it is. So it's been pretty sultry.
Yeah, and I know we were talking kind of before we started recording today, of just one thing that's really going on right now in the turf grass world is just that top growth has just exploded with these warm temperatures and all that rainfall from the last week. We were talking about mowing intervals, and boy, on like lawn height turf, if you're probably realistically on a 3 to 4 day mowing interval right now. If you go a week, it is a struggle with the amount of clippings you're producing. And
yeah.
Even on golf courses, I know there's a lot of golf courses that are still kind of short staffed, and so is the case with landscape services, and they're struggling to keep up. You can see, especially coming off of Memorial Day weekend, where a lot of people might have been mowing yesterday and are out there today, and it's there's like windrows of clippings out in the landscape right now. It's going to take a while to catch up from that.
Yes, it is. In my yard, we almost need to start talking about forage harvest equipment. It gets ahead of you really quick.
Yeah, it is. But well, thanks, Jeff. We appreciate it, and we'll sounds like we'll cool off a little bit this weekend. That's going to be a little startling, but
slow things a little bit down, maybe.
Slow things down, but it's nice, I guess, to finally have some summer weather. So I'm not going to complain about it being warm, because won't be too long. We'll be marching back towards winter already.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it.
You bet.